call the roll.
Trustee Coombs.
Here.
Trustee Haber. Trustee Gratter.
Here.
Trustee Swadek.
Here.
Trustee Masterson.
Here.
Trustee Chamberlain.
Here.
Mayor Kaplan.
Here too. A motion for approval of minutes to the Board of Trustee meeting of April 20th.
So moved.
Second.
April 20th?
April 6th.
April 6th.
I'm sorry, I'm the wrong one. April 6th. Any additions or corrections?
There's one very small one. Under non-routine motions,
What page?
the very first page, non-routine motions, the very first line, I think Mitch Shore's name is spelled S-H-O-R-E.
I don't think so.
No, you think it's S-H-O-R?
Yeah.
Okay. I may be wrong.
You may be right
I'm
too.
here to ask. But can we check it?
We'll check the spell of Mitch
Yeah.
Shore.
That's the only thing I've got.
Mr. Gwynn had a slight correction under paragraph on page 1, consultants, dealing with the gauge at the Des Plaines River. He thinks it would more accurately reflect his statements, or at least the tenor of his statements, if we strike the second sentence of that paragraph, beginning the purpose of the gauge.
The whole sentence is up?
The whole sentence.
Is that correct?
That's how I like to edit.
Make no commitment.
With one fell swoop.
Anything
Fell
else?
swoop.
All in favor of approving the minutes as corrected?
Aye.
We're getting better and better.
Abstain.
Treasurer's report, we don't have a treasurer today. Of course, manager's not here. Engineer's report.
Very briefly, I just got notice from the contractor for the Saunders Road project that they intend to commence construction activities next Monday. So we will be getting, there'll be road construction ahead signs, and of course, because it's a stimulus project, we'll have very large, colorful signs announcing to the world that the feds are participating in this project. And we expect to have all the construction wrapped up by the end of May. I was talking to Russell, we'll get in touch with the golf courses, let them know that we won't have any actual road closures, they're just some road construction, one-lane road at times. Also, we completed last week the field work for all the sanitary sewer smoke testing, so I'm just awaiting the reports from the contractor on that, and we'll follow up with any apparent cross connections or other repairs that need to be made for the sewer system. And then I just, to let the board know, I expect within the next week or two, the Lake County Division of Transportation will have the pre-construction meeting for the bike path construction from the Des Plaines River Trail to Thorn Meadow Road. They've invited us to come along to that meeting. That meeting is when we will then have construction scheduled for that project as well. I'll keep the board apprised of that. That's all I have.
Russ?
Only thing I got is, next meeting, I think we're gonna do the Badger, meters upgrades, so I'll have the Badger people here, and Murray, so we can go over that report that I gave you a couple weeks ago.
So bring your reports with you, so we don't
Bring
have to
reports.
again.
If you need extra copies, let me know. And, Mark Lobus will be going out this week, hopefully, and we got a stop sign, crooked over on Hoffman and, Portline, and we got another one missing somewhere else, so we're gonna try to get all the signs fixed and replaced and straightened up before the end of this week. That's all I got on that.
Thank you. CBA report? Plan Commission report.
Well, on behalf of David Needleman, our chair, who's traveling, I'm gonna just pass down the report. Did I give our quick one? I did. Mike Haber has a copy.
I put one in Mike's box.
We saved a copy.
Okay.
I won't go through all of the report. The attachments to the report, they're quite thick, and rather than attach them here, I'm gonna coordinate with Russ to have them put in your boxes in the next couple of days. Essentially, it describes the 4 properties that petition to be annexed. We actually, because of the number of items we had to consider, we had a lot on our plate at the Plan Commission. We had to consider amending the comprehensive plan map because the land use designation for that area was open space or open land. We had to consider text amendments, and we actually had 2 different zoning districts that we had to consider. And then we had, under those new text amendments, we had potential special uses that 3 of the 4 property owners were requesting, and they required separate hearings and separate findings for each of those properties. So we tried to just, in a thumbnail way, try to sketch through all of what happened in a short paragraph, really for each of the 3 special uses. We tried to provide what the rationale was in terms of meeting the standards and why the Plan Commission recommended approval of those special uses. The attachments, you'll get about 3 or 4 sheets, 11 by 17 for the Panley property and the Mulch Center property. These exhibits describe, they show the property, they show where the floodway is on the property, and they have a lot of notation on them that describes the steps that the property owner has to take to bring those into compliance, either by removing structures out of the floodway, creating compensatory storage. There's a lot of detail on the plan, so we're providing the concept plans for those 2 properties. Estonian House had a site parking plan that laid out the site and showed the number of parking spaces. The master text amendment, I called it master text amendment as an attachment because it includes changes to definitions in the zoning ordinance and then the 2 new zoning districts. So it's all, rather than have it separated in separate ordinances, it's one text amendment to the zoning ordinance. The comprehensive land use map revision is a map which basically shows the change in land use designation. And then the last 3 ordinances are drafts of the special use ordinances that would be adopted for each of these properties. If that's not all, besides transmitting the written report to the board, we have published for hearings before the Board of Trustees at the May 4th meeting on annexation agreements. The annexation agreements there has to be a public hearing before the village board before we can act on the annexation agreement.
So we'll have a public hearing next week.
So we'll have public hearing at the next meeting. The public hearing before the board is to consider the question of annexing the properties. And what the annexation agreement, you don't have it in front of you, and you will in the next few days, basically commits the village to annexing the properties, to classifying them within certain zoning districts, to granting the special uses, which will be these ordinances that are attachments to the Plan Commission report, will be attached as exhibits to the annexation agreement, and has other, boilerplate provisions, indemnifications, and discusses some of their property owners' obligations. For example, with respect to sanitary sewer going down the line, and just to complete, there's work that has to be done on a couple of these properties that we want done to ensure that they're in compliance with all the floodway regulations. So that's the Plan Commission report.
Thank you. Police report. Chief is at our chief's meeting?
Yeah. I get to play chief tonight too. Police report for March. 911 hang-ups 3, abandoned auto 1, accidents 14, alarms 25, animal complaints 2, fire assist 12, child safety seats installs 3, damage to property non-criminal 1, driving complaints 4, fingerprinting 2, lockouts 3, motor assist 10, suspicious circumstances 11, theft 1, case reports 4, crime prevention notices 3, traffic stops 88, persons issued citations 59, citations issued 65, and there's 9 houses are currently on the house watch list.